So as long as man has not got a center, as long as he's, divorced from his own center, not aware about how his consciousness is being manipulated, he will remain open to this kind of manipulation. Fantastic comment on this in Lord of the Rings. They didn't bring it out in the movie, except in one very short line, which is hard to miss, but in the book they emphasize it very, very prominently, that when they're approaching the wizard Saruman, who's a character in the story who's basically was a good man turned evil, that the other wizards in the know, or the other elders in the know, continually warn anyone who should approach Saruman to beware his voice.
The white wizard approaches.
To beware his use of language, because that alone will hypnotize you, and no matter how strong you are, you'll be pulled into his web.
Do not let him speak. He will put a spell on us.
I just loved that. I thought that was fantastic, a very powerful image. They did bring it out a little bit in the movie, but this whole idea of the seduction of a man's voice and the power of charisma, and the ability, and of course the media uses this a great deal. And you have, this ties back into the whole concept of the god Mercury. If anyone's familiar with the symbolism of Hermes and Mercury and Thoth, and the earlier version of all of these gods was Ogma from the Celtic tradition, and even Hern being the origin of the word Herm or Hermes. It's all Irish Druidic. Those gods were the gods of language. Those gods were the gods of words. Those gods were the gods of communication, with the understanding that communication by words is a phenomenally powerful and important weapon of both the good and the bad side. Interestingly, Ogma, the Celtic god, his other two traits was strength. They taught symbolically like this. Okay, so Ogma is the god of language, but he's also the god of strength. Yes, because language is strength. Language is a form of power. Man who knows how to manipulate language and words is strong. What was his title, his name? They call him the Honey Mouth. Ogma the Honey Mouth, because, and I guess there's even Scandinavian, I think Loki had the power of that, almost a hypnotic, ability with words.
Art is, like magic, the science of manipulating symbols, words or images, to achieve changes in consciousness. The very language of magic seems to be talking as much about writing or art as it is about supernatural events. A grimoire, for example, the Book of Spells, is simply a fancy way of saying grammar. Indeed, to cast a spell is simply to spell, to manipulate words, to change people's consciousness. And I believe that this is why an artist or writer is the closest thing in the contemporary world that you are likely to see to a shaman.
When you hear these talismanic words like control, security, stronger America, strength, realize that they're talismanic words. They're being used against you. They're seduction words to try and get you to accept this because you don't have that. Well, you've been raped of that. The people who are selling you one story here have actually taken away the very things that you needed that were in your psyche to begin with.
I am continuing and I am increasing the search for every possible path to peace.
We maintain our strength in order to deter and defend against aggression, to preserve freedom and peace.
No one, friend or foe, should doubt our desire for peace.
The United States wants peace.
We seek peace. We strive for peace.
I pledged in my campaign for the presidency to end the war in a way that we could win the peace.
I respect your idealism. I share your concern for peace. I want peace as much as you do.
We cannot wait for the final proof. The smoking gun. It could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
There is no doubt
that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Botulinum, VX, sarin, nerve agent.
Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Terrorism, cyber attacks,
Nuclear program.
Biological weapons.
cruise missiles, ballistic missiles.
Chemical and biological weapons.
Iraq has weapons of mass destruction.
President Bush has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Tony Blair has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Donald Rumsfeld has said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. Richard Butler has said they do. The United Nations has said they do. The experts have said they do. Iraq says they don't. You can choose who you want to believe.
The sources that have deceived us so constantly don't deserve our trust. And to the extent that we give them our trust, we set ourselves up to be scammed again and again.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
I will build new partnerships to defeat the threats of the 21st century. Terrorism and nuclear proliferation, poverty and genocide, climate change and disease. And I will restore our moral standing so that America is once again that last best hope for all who are called to the cause of freedom, who long for lives of peace, and who yearn for a better future.
The other root is in the fact that there is an agency working in the world to engender that. Now, luckily in the conspiracy movement today, what's jokingly called the conspiracy movement, or I prefer to call it the alternative research community, we have now authors and people from all walks of life who are investigating that fact, that second root. That we think that this is not by chance. We don't really think that man is that immoral. We don't really think that man of his own nature will run around, fighting wars and building napalm bombs and all that. So maybe there's something else going on. Finally, the human race is waking up to the fact that yes, that's right. Somebody has kickstarted this and maintains it through the perpetuation of people's false allegiances and all the rest of it. And I'm very happy and glad to see that taking place, this removing of the lid, which is astrologically connected to Pluto, the planet Pluto, or the archetype Pluto, or the New Age. The real truth about the New Age is that the revelations that arise because man gets sharper in his critical ability and starts to look beneath the surface of reality. That's great. What I'd really like to see, though, and what I'm hoping to very much help pioneer in this era, is more attention on the first root as well, which is that human beings need to examine their own private consciousness to understand some of the dynamics of the full psyche, not just the ego and not just the programmed brain self, because the brain is a machine programmed by the world. But then you also come in with a thing called the mind, which has been programmed over millennia or generations. People need to know about the tripartite division or schemata of the ego, of the brain, of consciousness, from the Freudian point of view. They should also find out about the quaternity schemata of Jung. It was a little bit similar to Freud, but a little bit different. These people have, understood the dynamics, the anatomy of something that you can't see, consciousness. People know about the body. You got 2 arms, you got 2 legs, you got 1 head. Okay, well then what is the anatomy of your consciousness? Anybody ever thought about that? Well, yes, somebody did. It's called Sigmund Freud. People need to pick up his books, get on the web and find out what is the anatomy of your consciousness. What is thinking? How do you think? What is thinking? How does that happen? What is thought? Who's thinking about thought? Because if you don't ask these questions, you're not going to have too much of an understanding of what might be spirit or all of that. You're looking for the spiritual, but if you don't know what you are, how can you ever find out the other? So the real journey now begins. All of these traumas and tragedies are in a way a catalyst. Sad but true that man has to learn through tragedy, but then, hey, wait a minute, even the Greeks knew that as far back as you go, if man is left without tragedy, he'll just sit on his ass and do nothing all day long. He will sun himself and he will take care of his narcissistic, personal, sensationalistic needs, and nothing of any other thing will cross his mind ever. So unfortunately, the universe, nature, whatever you want to call it, fate, has to sort of deliver man what we would call tragedy, you know. And therefore it wakes him up. It's a catalyst to him looking at deeper things. This is very, very necessary. And one of those areas now is that he needs to really continue the investigation of his own thinking, his own consciousness, and realize that the secrets, that's where the secrets lie.
One thing is sure, a great change of our psychological attitude is imminent. That is certain.
Why?
Because we need more. We need more psychology. We need more understanding of human nature, because the only real danger that exists is man himself. He is the great danger, and we are pitifully unaware of it. We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied, because we are the origin of all coming evil.